Hello, and welcome to my final presentation for Cinema 399, where we'll be discussing the four types of parenting styles and how they're represented over the years by the parents of South Park. We will also look at how these four parenting styles have an effect on the children that are being parented through the lens of the parents of South Park and the kids of South Park. Now, today we're going to be looking at the four parenting styles, which are four categories of parenting used by psychologists since the 1960s. They're based off of the work of developmental psychologist Diana Baumrind from Cal Berkeley. The model was expanded, however, by Eleanor Maccabee and John Martin of Stanford University in 1983. Baumrind noticed a correlation between the behavior of preschoolers while she was observing them, as well as the parenting styles of the kids, of the parents as they were picking up the kids. Now, initially, she identified three parenting styles: authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. But in the 1980s and 1983, Maccabee and Martin expanded the three-style model by expanding permissive parenting into two different styles: permissive and neglectful. Now, the first parenting style we're going to explore is the authoritative parenting style, which is really regarded as the best of the four styles, as it usually includes a healthy balance between the parent-child relationship and allows like a healthy dialogue regarding the child's feelings and emotions and actions during parenting and disciplinary situations. It's really characterized by high expectations of achievement, setting rules and enforcing boundaries, monitoring behavior, having open discussions, and providing guidance to the child. Disciplinary methods described as confrontative with outcome-oriented results, as well as concern for regulating behavior. I realize that this style relates mostly with the Bravlovsky family between Sheila and Gerald. We usually see, Sheila's very loving with Kyle and Ike. Gerald's usually willing to explain things and have discussions with the boys, whether it's their behavior or something that the friend group did, or the child did, or just something going on in the town. Negative effects, sometimes it does lead to helicopter parenting. We see that a lot, mostly with Sheila. She's kind of described as the Karen of South Park, where she kind of raises more issues regarding the boys. And we see this in the movie Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, when she leads a protest which turns into a war against Canada and Terrence and Phillip. Now, when we look at the results of the authoritative parenting method, when I was doing research, I found out that there were more positive outcomes from this parenting style, and it's kind of easy to kind of see that with Kyle and Ike. Children tend to be more independent, tend to be higher academic performing, more competent socially, and develop secure attachments with friends and relationships, and they tend to have a really good overall parent-child relationship. And this is really is shown pretty well with Kyle and Ike, or mostly Kyle, as he's our main lens into the show. Kyle is the moral compass of the group, of the boys. He's confident. He's athlete. He engages in sports. He's engages in academics, and he's usually pretty well conscious about what his friends are going through, or certain situations at like Stan or something like Kenny, when it comes to things in their own home lives. The next parenting model is the authoritarian, in which is characterized by high levels of parental control and low levels of parental responsiveness. They tend to be unresponsive to the child's needs and not understanding of the reasons why the child's acting in certain ways, or certain behaviors are coming from their child. They're not really willing to have that dialogue with their child. They tend to demand high standards, and the standards tend to be status oriented, and they demand blind obedience from the child, and they tend to utilize stern discipline and harsh punishments. Now, unfortunately, at least for me, with Butters being one of my favorite characters, the Stotch family is definitely really a model for this parenting style. We see the Stotches, grounding Butters, at the drop of a hat. Whether he's guilty of what they are accusing him of or not. Sometimes if he just makes a dumb face, his parents, just turn to judging and punishing, poor little Butters. The results of authoritarian parenting tends to be, the child is less independent, low self-esteem, end up having streaks of rebellious behavior, less emotional regulation, poor social competence, less coping skills, and even substance abuse. Now, how does these things relate to Butters? I think, poor social competence and low self esteem definitely stand out. Butters, when he's at school and when he's out of the house, he's often the victim to Eric's schemes. He's usually pretty naive when it comes to those, and tends to kind of grasp onto Eric as another authority figure, such as his parents, that he's usually not unquestioning of. Interesting enough, Butters seems to, even though he doesn't really characterize with most of these results, we do see him kind of disassociate at times, and we see that rebellious streak come out, or that seems to be his coping skill. So when you see Professor Chaos, or Vampire Butters, or even his future self, Victor Chaos, those seem to be higher self esteem, different characters than Butters himself that he tends to lean on in order to deal with the high stress, high demand of his childhood. Arguably worse parenting styles and least recommended would be the neglectful parenting style. This is where parents don't set firm boundaries or high standards. They're indifferent to their child's needs, and the children tend to have the worst outcomes. This may result from unresolved issues with the parents themselves. And if you haven't guessed already, this style I related to the McCormick family. Results of neglectful parenting tend to be the child ends up being more impulsive. They tend to have issues regulating their emotions. They encounter more delinquent behavior or addictive personalities, prone to substance abuse, and more mental issues characterized with suicidal behavior. Children of neglectful parents also may result in taking over a role reversal, where the child takes over the parenting role over younger siblings or even the parents themselves. Fascinating enough, Kenny does tend to characterize some of these results, sort of like his impulsive behavior when he's willing to do any dare that Cartman or Stan puts him up to, putting himself in dangerous situations. But fascinating enough, Kenny was surprisingly well adjusted for being in a neglectful home. He tends to have like a protective nature where he, similar to Butters, disassociates due to his upbringing into characters like Mysterion and Princess Kenny, where he kind of gives himself the responsibility of being that protector for the city as Mysterion, or protecting his younger sister as Mysterion. The fourth and final parenting style is the permissive parenting style, which kind of relates to Leanne and Eric's family dynamic, which fascinated me because this was the episode in which kind of inspired me to choose this topic. This style is kind of characterized for setting very few boundaries and rules. If there are rules, parents are reluctant to enforce them. Parents are warm and indulgent and don't like to say no or disappoint their child. And parents they're less likely to foster the child's emotional growth within this style. The episode that kind of inspired me to choose this topic was the one where Leanne brings in Cesar Millan to help her with Eric's behavioral issues. Because towards the end, once Eric kind of shapes up and starts acting accordingly, when Cesar Millan turns down Leanne's invitation to kind of hang out and be a friend for her, and told her that he's not a friend, she's a client. we see Leanne revert back to what really made Eric so terrible in the first place was that she leaned on him as a friend and emotional support instead of having that boundary there between parent and child. Now, obviously, parents should love children, but there is kind of boundary where I'm not your parent, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent. And this is kind of like an aspect called emotional incest. When even though it has like a gross kind of name, it's where a parent relies on their child for relationship that they would with a partner or a friend. And we see Leanne kind of embody this near the end of this episode when she says, you can have anything you want as long as you're here for me, to Eric, kind of sending him back down the rabbit hole they just kind of corrected him from permissive parenting, because the list is literally just a characteristic list of Eric Cartman, meaning can't follow clear rules, poor emotional regulation, lack of self-control, problematic behaviors such as aggression, encounter problems with relationships, egocentric tendencies, and associate with ambivalent attachments, meaning they're very anxious that once someone they're attached to leaves, they're very adamant on kind of forcing that attachment to come back. So we see that when Leanne gets a job as a selling houses, Eric responds very negatively and ends up going into real estate himself in order to bring his mom back to him. Or when he's dating, when Eric's girlfriend breaks up with him, he says he's either going to kill himself, or he freaks out, or he has breakdowns trying to get his girlfriend back. So this kind of shows the results of permissive parenting from a future relationship standpoint, and an emotional development standpoint as well.